Welcome back to What Would You Ask podcast. My next guest was on that Shark Tank show, like everybody else in the series. He is the creator of Beardhead. I mean, you guys remember this one, right? Kevin had the Christmas stuff on. By the way, it looked like he was a football-shaped head underneath that. I didn't know if he was from, like Family Guy or it was weird. And then he started doing the ho 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 to Kevin, I believe. But man, did Kevin look good in his? I mean, that was like, it was fit right. I mean, perfect. It was like, you didn't even know who that was. He appeared on season 7, episode 11. I still don't know why we put episode number in there. I guess people want to know directly where you are on Shark Tank. Of course, David Stankunas, welcome to What Would You Ask podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you as well. David, we're going to talk about the prior to Shark Tank, when you got into the tank, and then we certainly want to hear what's going on at Beardhead today. But tell everybody what you brought in with you when you got to LA for the taping of the show. What was the product like?
Sure. Well, actually, so first, I live in LA. We do business here. The warehouse is in LA. So that was actually really, really convenient for us. And I'm going to say us a lot, and it's me. But like when you're a business owner, you end up using that royal we kind of thing. So excuse me if I do that. But yeah, we basically, I brought in a couple of other key beard heads that we really, really like, which is the ones that the Sharks wore. Those were the ones that, I chose beforehand that I thought would show well on TV. We had certain ones for Barbara and stuff like that. And then we also brought that entire set. If you recall, we had this big
the whole
wall with all the product. Honestly, I might have gone a little overboard with that stuff. I have all this. I mean, you can see some of the stuff back here, right?
Yeah.
I have all this stuff, and I wanted, now in retrospect, maybe it was a little too much, but at the time, I wanted to make sure that the Sharks kind of saw us as a established brand, that we weren't just some like one-off joke product, that we had full lines of products. We had marketing materials. We had retail ready packaging. We have, standees and all that kind of stuff. So that was the whole purpose. And fortunately, because we were in LA, I could throw it in a U-Haul and just bring it. It was basically like a 20-minute drive to the studios where we filmed. So It was convenient. If I had to fly for that, I would have just brought a handful of beard heads, and I don't know.
Are you setting that up, David? Are they doing that setup for you? I imagine you have some role in that, right?
Little bit of both. So I went and constructed. So this basically was kind of a variation of our trade show display at the time. So again, it was, I didn't make it just for Shark Tank. I might have changed a little things here and there, but it was basically like a trade show setup. So I'd set this thing up like many, many times before. So I took it all over to the studios, Sony studio lot, in this giant hangar, right? And then they have the filming area, but they have like lots of other areas. And part of that was just where you have all the stuff. All the other contestants had their stuff there too. Probably not as many, or many had as much as we did. But the stuff was there. So I went, and they basically said a couple days ahead of the taping day, go and set up what you can. But it's got to be somewhat mobile, because we have to bring it out to the filming area, the set area, right? Which was a little difficult for us because it's this giant wall and it wasn't super stable. We ended up putting it on these rollers, like these moving rollers, and 4 or 5 people were all just kind of like, oh God, don't let it fall over.
Yeah, you're going to a trade show. You're putting it in, leaving it there, and breaking it down, right? There's no movement at all, so that must have been difficult.
But that wasn't like something that we could do, because like time is money there, and they have to move from contestant to contestant, segment to segment as quickly as possible. So we set it up beforehand. I had some guy. I mean, since I knew how to set it up, I basically like, you guys don't need help. Let me just do it. I'm local, so I can. I don't mind doing this here. And then I think like at some point, like I said, when we're moving it, I had people help me out. It's funny because I got a call the night before. Was it the night before? Maybe it was the day before. It was right before we're supposed to film. I had this whole thing. It was all set up, feeling okay, a little less stressed. And then it's like 11 o'clock at night. I get a call from someone there, and they're like, we broke it. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Right. Fortunately, like, it wasn't a big deal. I had a spare little thing. It wasn't, if you didn't know how this thing was put together, it's like this snap sort of thing. Fortunately, I was able to kind of fix it, and we just used some duct tape as well behind, and it wasn't a big deal, but it's not a call you want to get right before we're going to go on. And after this, the whole process was like a year. We could talk about that a little bit more.
Let's get into that. So let's talk about the journey. You were inspired by Shark Tank because you're building a business, you're a big fan, all the above. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration to get on Shark Tank.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I was a huge fan of the show. It actually, and it was a little embarrassing when I first talked to the producers, because they kind of called me. They asked me who my favorite shark was, or who, I wanted to get a deal with. And I only knew Cuban as the shark, and I knew kind of Mr. Wonderful and his reputation. But I just told him, like, to be honest, I don't watch the show, and and it's not because it's not because I didn't know about the show. I knew the show very well. It's just, I'm an entrepreneur. I really love, like, kind of doing small business and entrepreneurship and startup stuff. And watching the show was just, it's frustrating. So it's either one, sometimes the people on there just have no idea what they're talking about, and it drives me nuts.
Me too.
And then some people have really awesome ideas, and it kind of gets me going and psyched. But the show's on a Saturday night, and I'm not trying to get all, like, into business mode on Saturday night, because I'm not gonna be able to sleep, and I'm not gonna work. So I was like, I'm just gonna step away from it. But why I decided to go on the show was one, for years, actually, we would speak to people, and they would say, you got to get Beardhead on Shark Tank. You got to go on the show. And I was always like, well, yeah. I didn't really want to, because I didn't have a clear plan or an idea of what I wanted, even an investment for. We're growing organically. I felt pretty comfortable. I didn't want to give up any part of the company. And I also didn't want to kind of share some of the, maybe the financials, things like that, with millions and millions of people. I wasn't quite there yet. But why I eventually decided to go on the show was, like, I think business started to slow down, and that was there was a down year. We mentioned that on the show. And there was a particular kind of avenue where I saw the company could really grow, which was in sports licensing, like the NFL licensing, things like that. And that's not something I wanted to do without, let's say, the help of a shark, without an outside investor who was connected, who could really kind of take that avenue and really make it blow up. Because if I were to do that on my own, it would be far more difficult, and I don't know if I would have been able to do it. So that's why I went on the show.
Makes sense. Ashley from Medford, Massachusetts wants to know about the audition process. How many times did you apply? What was it like going through the audition and working with the producers?
Well, so it was our process was a little bit different than what I think most people understand the Shark Tank process to be. And that is, you go to these open audition calls, you're waiting in line with hundreds or thousands of other people. They're all getting ready with their pitches. And then you go to pitch to, like, I don't know, 3 producers, at an American Idol style table,
right,
something like that. And we didn't do that. Because at the time, Beardhead was, we'd been doing business 7-8 years already. We're established. We have multiple years of sales. We're in stores all over the world, so they have a sort of separate process for companies that are a little bit further along, that are more established, that don't just essentially have an idea and a product mock-up, right? And so basically what happened was, the kind of the spark why the exact moment I decided to apply for Shark Tank was when I saw another founder of a company called Beard Brand. His name's Eric, was on the show. So he got on the show. I had collaborated with Eric a couple of times. So Beard Brand, they do, like, beard oils. They're one great company, men's grooming. They do a lot of just, one of the original, there are tons now, but now they're like the OG, like, beard oil, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we had done some collaborations with them, exchanged a lot of emails, talked to Eric many times. So I saw him on Shark Tank, like, oh, you know what? Let me shoot this guy an email and just ask him what's up. Maybe we should try to get on the show, right? And so I sent him an email, congratulated him, and asked him, hey, if we want to be on the show, who should I talk to, right? And he said, well, no problem. Let me introduce you. He just sent an email off to, X name producer, said, hey, it's a very short introduction email. It's just, hey, here's my friend David. He's the owner of Beardhead, really cool company. Hope you guys can connect, right? And then I followed up, kind of explained what we do. And then 2 days later, I get a call out of the blue. I thought, I would at least get an email reply. Oh, great. That's really interesting. Would you like to set up a time to talk maybe, or just to get ignored? But I didn't. So it was like a Friday evening, 5:30. I'm kind of winding down from work, getting ready to go home maybe. And I get a call. I thought it was just a spam call like normal, but I answered it anyway. And it was the producer, and they were like ready to talk business and like essentially kind of giving me an interview on the spot to kind of gauge my energy. I felt it was always energy level is really important. You can't be like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
So I that was where I was at on a Friday evening at 5:30. I was like, huh, what? But then I'm like, gotta kind of turn it back on,
Yeah.
So it went from there, we just got that intro email, and then I got a call and they said, we love your stuff. Let's talk about you getting on the show. And how it works for the kind of next stage companies is it's all the same after, like if you went through the normal audition process, you got past that first round, you pitched to those producers, they liked you. That's where we end up. Like we just get that jump start over that portion. Right. And from there, we basically fill out this, long application. We send in our tax returns and, provide all our financial, everything that goes along with it. So they have to vet you. They have to know everything about your company because they're not going to waste their time with, a fake company. And then the key part is we have to still do the video audition, which is, they don't usually show those, I don't think, but it's like a, 4 to 5, 6, 7 minute, whatever, kind of introducing the company. So we did that. And so this all happened in October, and they said, great, we love it. Do all this, turn in all the info. We're going to help you if you need help, and then have your video done and send it in by February, something like that. So we had some time, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I did over my winter and just got everything ready together and put together this kind of goofy video. And again, like looking back, I'm like, I wish I did a little better job, but I did add some. I have it posted on the website at beardhead.com, so you can check it out if you're interested. Yeah.
What did so you get it submitted in time? Obviously, what's the lag time between February and they're telling you? Well, in your case, you're driving down the street to the studio, but right. We need you in LA, or we need you to come to the studio. What's that time frame?
So I think, February we turned it in, and then I think I heard back from them maybe April, May, something like that. And there were 2 taping sessions. One was in June. This was because the season would start in September in the fall, right? So they did one taping session for 2 weeks, like in June, and then they did another one in September. So they originally were going to have us come in June, and then because we're local and they're running late and behind and whatever, so I was geared up for June, right? I was, stressed out and kind of preparing. And then like 2 weeks before film day, they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to move you to September because you're local. We don't have to schedule flights and hotels. We already booked these other people, right? So you're pushed back.
Wow.
Right?
Interesting.
Which I didn't mind at the time. I was like, you know what? Actually, it was fine because I wasn't quite ready. I could have got there, but I appreciated the extra time. And then we did. So we were pushed to schedule to film the first week of September. We got pushed back again to the second week, and now I'm getting a little worried because if we don't get that last, whatever date, we're not going to do it. I mean, It's not because we don't want to. It's just sometimes, that was always the kind of, because they always caveat whenever they're talking to you the entire time. Do this, great, looking forward to it. You got all this stuff ready. Just so you know, you might not make it on the show, because we might run out of time. We might not get to you. Even if we get to you and you film and you go in front of the sharks and you do all that stuff, still might not get to air because whatever, maybe you're terrible. Maybe you swear too much or maybe they just, they don't find you interesting or you get cut. Right. So the fact that we got pushed basically to the last there was a Saturday, Sunday. We did it on Saturday, not Sunday. So we still had one, but we got pushed almost to the very, very end. And that was getting a little stressful because I was afraid that so I always had to temper my expectations the entire year, right? Because I started in October and now we're all the way to September.
Jeez.
That we might not make it. We still have to prepare because if we make it, we're going to have a lot of sales. So we got to prepare for that, but we still might not make it, right?
So, Dave, do they put you up? I imagine they would, because we hear a lot about the quarantine that everybody kind of, not the current quarantine, folks, the Shark Tank quarantine. Did they put you up in a hotel even though you're a local guy, either there or you didn't get in a hotel? That's interesting.
No. I don't know maybe if I were asked for one, maybe they would have put me up, but I wouldn't want one. I said, I'm just down the street, so I wouldn't really, it was great for me just to be in my own comfort space, and prepare the way I wanted to prepare. So
tell us about the day, they call you up and say, okay, today's the day. And you get to the studio, and take us through that process a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, it was kind of like a week before they've been telling me my film date for a long time.
Yeah.
But at some point I'm like, okay, this is for real. So I should say when they pushed me back a week, I had already taken all my stuff over there and I hadn't quite prepared it and set it up yet because that came later and then they broke it and stuff. But,
right.
I thought it was going to be that week and we're ready. And then that got pushed back. Right. But at some point, I think, a couple days before, and it was the last film day, essentially the last film weekend. So I knew we're definitely going to film that day. So a couple of days before, I go in and I set everything up completely. This is like 2 or 3 days before. And then also, because I'm local and I just took the time to sort of hang out around the set and the studio and just kind of let me just soak it in. So, I'm more familiar with everything. I don't get overwhelmed when I'm actually there on film day. So I spent a couple hours there and just hung out with the producers a little bit, just, relax, I guess, and just feel better about everything. And then when it came time for the actual film day, I woke up at 5 a.m. I think everyone was supposed to meet in the lobby of the hotel that everyone was staying at 6 or 6:30, something like that. You jump in a shuttle, they take you to the studio, to the lot, and then you kind of get your own little prep room in one of those multi-use sort of
trailers.
Yeah, the big trailer, you see at construction sites or something like that.
Yeah.
So they have 8 rooms or something like that in there, and there's a little area for makeup and an area for food and stuff. And then you just kind of sit there until it's your turn to go film. And before that, they'll put you like an hour before you're supposed to go film. They'll throw you in the makeup chair, give you a haircut, put some powder on your face. Yeah, and the thing is with me, I think I was the only one there that was alone. I didn't have anyone with me, I didn't want anyone for support. I don't even know if you're allowed to have people just for support, but everyone there was partner and whatever it is with the company. So I felt a little lonely to a certain degree. I'm just sitting in this room by myself. Everyone else, at least they can kind of talk it out, but maybe, it's also, I guess it allowed me to focus to a certain degree. So
how was your nerves? You're sitting in that quasi green room, I guess. And they tell you got an hour. I've heard you can hear maybe muffled words from the actual studio because you're not too far away. What is your anxiety level there? Are you thinking about just knock out the presentation? Are you thinking about the sharks? You don't thinking about falling in the alley on the way in, or down the tunnel, whatever it's called?
Well, I can tell you for me, and this might be different for depending on who's presenting there or who's the contestant is. But for me, I was very, very anxious about that first 2-minute pitch. Right, that opening pitch where you just kind of do your thing, and the sharks don't interrupt, and that's essentially a memorized sort of presentation, which I'm less comfortable with. I'm much, and as far as and that's a 2-minute thing out of maybe 30 to 40 minute long interaction with the sharks, right? And I wasn't worried at all about the shark interaction. The Q&A, that whole where they're supposed to grill you and all that. I'm very comfortable with that. Comfortable talking about the business, but that first 2 minutes, I spent probably more time trying to practice that 2-minute little presentation and memorize it than I did for all the prep for the Q&A. And that was the thing that really kind of made me nervous. So, kind of going into it, sitting in that little green room. And first I should say that you're in the outdoor one for a couple hours, depending on, so I was in the second group and whatever. So a couple hours there. And then they, about one or two, if there's like one or two people before you, then you go on to the main hangar and they put you in a dark little room. Like the lights are much darker because, they're filming in the other area. Right. And that's where the nerves really start to kick in. Because before you're kind of out. I don't know if you're married. I got married the year before that, I think, or maybe it was a year out, whatever it was. But I just remember like when we're getting married, for the guy anywhere, it's like, it's kind of chilling, like for the whole day, sort of leading up. Yeah, we'll kind of get ready, take some photos, great, but it's not a stressful. But then all of a sudden, like 3:30 or like 30 minutes before you're ready, everything's just going like crazy, and that's kind of that's sort of how it felt right before the Sharks. Yeah, because I'm by myself, remember, so I'm not talking to anyone. And then all of a sudden, they're like, "Okay, go," and then you stand right there. The lights come on, and then those doors. They're like, then they open up. You're like,
hello.
Are we doing this? We're doing this. Oh my God. Right.
That's so good. We are speaking with David Stankunas, the creator of Beerhead. And we're going to talk more about now. We're at that door right now, folks. The one they tell you to keep walking. Don't worry. It's going to open for you. And then make sure you go stand at that spot. So let's get into the tank. We're in the tank now. And Ashley from Macon, Georgia wants to know, how intimidating was that 30 seconds where you just wait and stare at the sharks?
Yeah, that was, that's probably the most intimidating part, right? Because you can't say anything yet. And like I said, for me, that 2-minute sort of pitch was very kind of nerve-wracking for me. And so, you just sit there and you're supposed to just look and you're like, do I look at their eyes? Do you like, is there a close-up on my face? Am I going to look right? So that part is not too fun.
Yeah, I imagine.
But for the rest of the time, once you get going, and when you're like, at least for me, when I'm talking about the business and the sharks were interacting, after that, I felt like all the intimidation sort of went completely gone, with the exception of one part we could talk about a little bit.
So your presentation, I thought you knocked it out. I mean, I thought you were well-spoken. You didn't move. Some people move a lot. You weren't moving your head a lot. You were looking at them. It was a very professional presentation, I thought.
Thanks.
And so even when you got to the numbers, and we'll talk about that in a second, I want to ask Christina from Huntsville, Alabama's question. Her question was, David, what were the key points of your presentation, and did you feel like they were received well by the Sharks?
Well, I think that the biggest thing was, aside from, we talked about before, is sort of with the setup and trying to make sure they're aware that we're more than just kind of this like jokey little one product kind of thing, that we're an established brand with kind of avenues of growth. And that was the main other point, because I knew that the Sharks, if I were to get an investment from them, they would need to see some sort of, potential big enough to make it worth their while. Mm-hmm. And, if we were just to sort of continue along the way as we've been going, it would have been fine for me, right? Just like financially, like, okay, it turns a profit, do well, but the Sharks not going to care if you're doing $1 million a year in sales. They don't care about $1 million. They want 10 million. They want 50 million, right? So it was really kind of trying to get them excited. The point was to try to get them excited about the potential for Beardhead to grow. And granted, it was a stretch, right? This is still a novelty product at the end of the day, which is ultimately why, spoiler alert, they didn't offer a deal. But it seemed like they liked the company and they liked the brand, but I think that I couldn't quite get them to the point where I wanted to, as far as kind of the potential for there. And that potential specifically was, I was trying to focus on opening up into the sports licensing market, tailgate market, and then also to a lesser degree, the kids market, because those were two avenues that we hadn't fully fleshed out, particularly in the sports, which had the biggest sort of potential. But yeah, didn't quite get there.
You hand out the samples, everybody starts looking at, they can see them, so they don't need to really look at up close at the flavor or the style. They're actually looking at the quality of the material. And that was really impressive, because Kevin's looking at it and you can see that he's impressed. certainly Robert was looking at it. He put his right on, and if you look at it closely, I think it's Lori that was helping him put it on. He says, "Oh, these are really nice," and she was nodding her head as well. So you got a lot of people saying, "Hey, this feels good. It looks good." That's got to make you feel good if you're reviewing that like we were. I don't know how it was all cut up, but it's very positive.
It was, and actually, that was probably something I wasn't fully prepared for. Was actually how well the Sharks reacted to everything. I was, I obviously when you're planning, you have to plan for them to like really kind of dig into you and have those sort of answers and comebacks and what have you on if in case they really go after you. And I didn't get to use any of like my preparation. I had prepared a lot. Like I was having imaginary arguments in my head with Mr. Wonderful there, just like. And I'm like, come on, man, you didn't give me anything. I had some good comebacks that were gonna, probably make it to a commercial or something.
Yeah, you might have had the template to how to do it without getting into big back and forth or an argument with these guys.
Yeah.
Let me ask you David's question from Houston, Texas. I like this one actually, David. Good question. He says, was there a weak area of your business that you thought may be concerning during the Q&A section with the Sharks?
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought for sure. Again, if you haven't seen it recently, I have to talk about some of the financials we had, our revenues going up like this, and then it flattened and a little bit down and flattened out, right? So they don't want to see like kind of flat or like down a tiny bit. They want to see like this.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that for a second, folks. What David is describing, and if you watch this, you'll remember they're asking him a lot of questions about, right? It's rapid fire, remember? And even if you're listening to all the interviews from the Shark entrepreneurs, they're telling you we don't get a sense, us the viewers don't get a sense of how quick it is in there, right? They're talking to each other, they're talking to David, they're talking to each other, and they're firing. Somebody's talking, Robert's asking this, but Mark's asking this. We see this nice cut up thing, like there's 5 seconds between each question, and thank you for asking. It's not like that. But anyway, David's right on. He's answering the questions. They talk. I remember them saying to you, there was a little bit of not really any miscommunication, but you said we sold 250,000 beer heads, and they said, and you said $5 million, and then somebody asked, and it was Robert said this year, and then you said no, over the time frame, right. And then Mark got involved and said, what did you do last year, and what did you do this year, and Kevin as well, and that's where you mentioned the $934,000, 934,000 revenue, and it was a blip of a few $100,000. But did they give you chance? I seem like they harped on that a little bit. Did you felt like you had a chance to answer it completely then?
Yeah, I think so, because they're really. I mean, I can't recall if how much of that answer, if anything, got cut or not. But I mean, there's some reasons, right? There was like some legal issues, and that takes away from my ability to focus because I'm kind of doing everything on other stuff. Yes. But I mean, to be honest, like the market softened a little bit. There are some new competitors, right? And, like it or not, we are still like a trendy type of product. We like to, I do what I can to make it have some legs, but there's not really like a super like easy, like, oh, okay, fine, no problem sort of answer to it. No. And so it is what it is, right? And that's the sort of the argument that I have to make to convince the Sharks, okay, yes, there's that part of the business, but then here are the other ways that we can grow the business, and with your help, we can turn it from 1 million to 10 million. And
I want to talk to you about licensing in a second. Let's answer Samantha's question from Hilton Head, South Carolina. She says, David, were you hoping for a deal with any specific Shark and gearing your presentation towards them?
Yeah, I think that I think Cuban's always a little bit of a wild card because sometimes he just invests in things because he likes the person or he thinks it's an interesting idea. Yep. And the only other one I was really looking at was Robert. And that's particularly because he invested in I knew somebody else who was on the show, Evan from Tipsy Elves, one of the founders from Tipsy Elves. Yeah. They do like funny Christmas sweaters. At least they did. Now they do everything because they got to deal with Shark, and they really expanded. But it was, I had known Evan from trade shows, and we talked I wouldn't say frequently, but we do exchange ideas and bounce thoughts off each other on the business, because we're both similar in that we're seasonal types of businesses, novelty sort of product, consumer product, that kind of thing, right? So, because Robert invested in a company like that, I felt like that was very much aligned with how Beardhead could be. So I felt, that was probably the best chance we had. And it turned out, it seemed like he was very close, I honestly, I went in not really feeling like too confident that we would get a deal. But as the presentation went on, and as I kind of went at Robert a little bit more, and as he deliberated, you could see him thinking in his head, I really did feel like there was a good shot right at the very end that he would say, let's do it. But
I thought the same thing. I thought he loves the I don't want to say quirky, but he's just like there's a guy that lives his life to the fullest. He's always the guy that's jumping on the board or the skateboard or the paddle board, or he's always doing the exercise.
I think if we didn't have a blip in the sales, that would have probably put us over the edge where he might have invested. Or if he had a particular, like, really good, I don't know whether or not, because this is just me speculating, right? But if he had like a very strong connection, let's say with a, license type of business or sports, or if it were like Cuban, because he's got like all these sports contacts, he owns a freaking arena, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if he owns it or not, but whatever. He can certainly get my product in his own arena.
Yeah.
That would have, but I don't know what Robert kind of has in that space. So
I thought Mark had recently purchased that facial thing.
like the face
the
paint kind of thing.
Yeah.
I saw him at a trade show too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He kind of half convinced me to get on Shark Tank as well. So yeah.
So let's talk about the licensing. And I'm not an expert in this, but I know it's a lot more difficult than people just think. It would seem, from the people that aren't in the world, in the industry, I should say, that's a natural progression for your product, I would think, anyway. But tell us a little bit about the real world of this. It's not as easy as people think, right?
No, I get that all the time. Like, oh, well, because we have our tailgate line where it's just kind of colors, teamed colors. Right. We don't have the actual logos.
Sure.
It was more or less kind of a test to see, if we can actually have any sort of legs in this market. And people just say, well, why don't you just get the license, get the logo on there? I'm like, well, one, it's a long application process. It's an expensive one, especially if you want to get something like NFL. If you want to go college, it's a very difficult, long process. And for something like NFL, I think it's 6 figures you have to basically pay out, whether you have sales or not. It's basically you have to pay a percentage of your sales of licensed products to the NFL, but there's a minimum, and that minimum is 6 figures, right? So if you do the license, you don't get any sales, you still owe them that money, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, that was kind of why I didn't want to go into the licensing without a shark or without an investor, without a connected investor, because it could be an incredibly expensive sort of thing to do. And if I didn't have a sort of a retail chain distribution set up that was ready to purchase the product, if we had it made with the licensing, then I just couldn't take that risk. It's not just the money, it's the time. And it's not just the money for the license, but you have to produce this product as well,
Couple more questions before we find out what's going on over at Beerhead and see how things are doing, and then also find out how the best way we can get in touch with David and all of the Beerhead styles. I wanted to ask you this, kind of jumping back a little bit. Your $250K for 25%, I think, is what you went in with. That seemed to be received fairly well, right?
There's no pushback on it.
There was nothing, but it was interesting. What is that process like? You realize that you can get, your evaluation can be ripped apart no matter what. Right. I really, because they disagree about the tenements of what evaluation is made up of. Mark and Kevin never agree about it. Mark thinks it's so overrated, and Kevin thinks it has to be this exact, method.
Right.
But you were received pretty well with that.
Yeah.
Based on your
so I think there's a couple things. One, when you're a bit more established and you have a couple years of sales, and the product isn't necessarily technological advances or anything like that. We're a consumer product that is the same. We're soft goods, right? We're apparel and that kind of stuff. So there are kind of multiples that you can look at, generally speaking, on multiple of either your net income or your revenue. And I priced it fairly, which was just like a 1xr revenue or 3xr net income, and that's pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, like it would be a little low. If we had a shark on board, like that multiple would be higher because there's much more potential for growth there. Sure. But that's part of the reason why I talked about before, how it drives me nuts when I'm watching Shark Tank, and sometimes people are coming out with these insane valuations. They're like, well, what are your sales last year? And they're like, well, I had about $500 in sales. I'm like, how is your company worth $1 million if you had $500 in sales, right? Yeah. And I mean, because we have this idea, fine, but that's where the argument and the disagreements can come in. Like, how much is that idea worth? And that's sort of opinion on how you feel it's going to flesh out.
Well, I like the ones that really you look at and say, have you watched the show before? You're coming on with $300,000 ask and 3% of the company. They don't get out of bed. They've made it quite clear for 10%, right? or more. Yeah. And it's just amazing that, and I think they, I don't know. It's crazy. But let me ask you a question.
I should say the producers, they tell you, like, I think that's one of the things, like, don't do that. You're just, there's no point, and you're going to look stupid, right? Right. They're going to tear you apart. Warning. So, they didn't have to do that with me because, I kind of, I had a good idea of what the company should be worth. But it is funny how I don't understand how some people can still come out with that, given at least what I was told going in. They make it pretty clear, like, don't do that.
Well, maybe that may be the ones that are just looking for the advertisement and not the deal, unfortunately. Right. But Murphy in North Tonawanda, New York, wants to know your most memorable moment from the entire process, on and off the camera. What was your most memorable moment?
Yeah. So it was on camera. It didn't make it to the show, and I knew it wasn't going to make it. Mark Cuban said, "They'll cut this." But so basically, the most memorable thing, the thing that I'll always think back about, was this interaction I had with Cuban. He was actually really, really nice. He was kind of, I think on the show we might have been a little bit harder, or it seemed like he might have pushed back a little bit. But he was just very nice to me on a personal level, because he likes entrepreneurs and people who are kind of like doing their thing and hustling. I guess he saw that, and that's what I was doing. So he was just really nice. But when he said, okay, blah, 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 I'm out. And I kind of had this, I felt he was going to be out already. So I thought in my head, this is what I'm going to do. This will be interesting. It'll be funny for me. I basically said, okay, but let me make you an offer, Mark. I will give you 10,000 free Dallas Maverick beard heads, and for a giveaway in your arena, free of charge. How about it? And I thought, he would consider it, interesting. No, he looked at me and he's just like, if I did that, I would be the dumbest man in basketball. I was like, what do you mean? That was the first throughout I said I was comfortable interacting with the Sharks, which I was. That completely threw me off, because in all my little scenarios I played out in my head, I did not expect him to say that. Yeah. And I was just like, what? And he said, do you know why? It's like, why? And he said, have you ever heard of James Harden? And now I'm like, oh God, does he think obviously I know who James Harden is. At the time, I think he was the leading scorer in the NBA. He has a big beard, plays for the Houston Rockets, or he did. And I'm like, now I'm thinking to myself, this guy thinks I don't even know who James Harden is. Oh no, he asked me first, are you a basketball fan? Of course I'm do you know James Harden? I was like, oh God, he thinks I'm lying that I'm a basketball fan because I don't know who James Harden is. And he explained, James Harden is a league rival, right? They're in the same division, right? So how dumb would I be to have a beard-related promotion when the most famous basketball player with a beard is James Harden? I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, fine. But I felt at that time, it was just, I felt really dumb. Now, what makes it really memorable was, he kind of put me on blast there, but then he said, look, but you should do something with James Harden. In fact, his agent is so-and-so. I forgot the name.
Yeah.
You should call him up. Tell him Mark Cuban told you to call him and do something with James Harden. I thought that was amazing.
You didn't do it?
I didn't do it. I didn't do it because, okay, look, this was all going on during the filming, right? So I'm just like, whoa, okay, now but I still got cameras and I got to focus on this other stuff. So I couldn't really wait, what was that name again? Let me I don't have my phone. I can't write it down.
When did he tell you it wasn't going to make it to air? At the end?
Oh yeah. So he said, but you know what you should do? And you should call up James Harden's agent, so-and-so. And he said, this won't make it to air. But then he said the guy's name. And,
okay.
He said, we'll cut this, right? So that's I thought that was really amazing.
That's
and
cool.
Take advantage like an idiot. And I mean, they don't let you go and talk to him after, right?
Yeah.
When you're done, you're walk off. Yeah. And so it's not like I could go back. Hey, by the way, Mark, could you give me that name again? And can you get that? So I felt kind of embarrassed. And honestly, at the end of it, I was like, done. That's a year of my life. I've been thinking about this basically. So I was kind of just, I'm okay with that. So, but I thought that was really cool of him. Really cool.
So tell me a little bit about the Shark Tank effect. I got some research from my crack staff here that said you had some challenges with the website and crashing and some things going on that premiere of your episode cost you quite a bit of money.
God, it was just, I mean, so we know we're going to be on, I mean, I don't know I'm going to be on the show, but like I'm preparing for months and months. I'm trying to prepare and I always hear website's going to crash. So I thought, well, I know the website's going to crash, but so let's not have it crash. And it crashed. And I did, I mean, looking back, I probably could have done something else. And now I'm on a new platform, Shopify, the most popular platform, e-commerce platform. At the time, it wasn't, or maybe it was, but I was on Magento. And I'm not doing a plug for Shopify, but they're great. I love them. I'm really upset that I didn't do it before because, we're doing our own hosting. We're paying for, our own servers. And I told them for months I was saying, look, we need it not to crash. We're going to get tens of thousands of at least concurrent viewers on the website. It cannot crash. I don't care how much we're paying. We're not even paying that much for hosting. I don't know, a couple $100. We bumped it up to like $1,500 a month or something like that. Cause I'm like, I will pay you $10,000. Just don't let it crash. This weekend, it cannot crash. And then they're like, well, no, you got the most expensive thing. It's not going to crash. We'll have someone there, like standing by on tech support, ready to talk to you. It crashed, and I was like, can I give you guys 10 grand so it doesn't, and get me like every server, and they're like, no, we don't do that, but we got this.
Can you monetize the loss at all or no?
I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say because I could tell you like over that weekend we did, over that weekend, because it was really a huge rush throughout the weekend. We probably did, I'd have to look back. It's been a couple of years, but might have done like 200,000 in sales off our website.
Jeez.
And that was like with the website being down like that entire night, during the peak time. So I feel like we could have done a lot more. Granted, I feel like, okay, yeah, probably a lot of those people, maybe they came back or, they went, fortunately we had some product on Amazon. So they were able to buy some on Amazon. Now we have a lot more on Amazon. But for sure we definitely lost. That's why I was saying I'd pay 10 grand just for that night for it not to go down. And I would have been ahead of the game, So that was just, I don't know. I still regret that. I still regret it.
That's tough. That's a tough hit. And the worst part of it is nothing you can do about it. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You get promises from, a telecommunications company. What are you going to do? I mean,
it's, I'm not super technical in that background. I wish I knew a little bit more so I could like tell when people are BSing me or they just, there certainly is a way I could have had it not crash, right?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a way.
There's definitely a way.
Of course.
Somehow, but I guess I just, if I got the insurance, well, these people clearly know what they're talking about. If they say, and I'm telling him exactly what's going to happen, and if they say it's not going to crash, well, who am I to question them?
Hey,
right?
let me ask you a question I just thought of.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell them the reason why you're concerned. Could you have?
We could.
Oh,
we
you could
yeah.
say I'm Shark Tank and
Well, up because I think it's like a week before. So
okay.
it's like 8 days because like
they're doing promos.
The previous episode they start doing the promo. So
right.
yeah, it's like they say a week before you're allowed to start.
Imagine you doing that. Listen, there's a really good reason why I'm doing. Yeah, okay, sir, whatever. But I could do $400,000. Yeah, all right, sir.
Yeah.
So tell everybody what's going on today at Beerhead.
Yeah. So
Beardhead.
Beardhead.
At Beerhead.
Well, I mean, we haven't really done too much. We haven't done too much differently. We have a couple new styles, but we didn't do the licensing stuff, right? We did kind of go heavier into kids, which actually turned out pretty well. It's a really strong category for us. So if you go to the website, beardhead.com, you'll see a lot of new kids styles. In
different
general,
sizes and all that too, right? For kids?
No, I mean, the kid size is a different size than the adult size, but basically because all our stuff is very elastic, I should say, because it's knit and it has like a lot of flexibility, elasticity. So it's kind of one size fits all, and we rarely have an issue where their head is too big.
That's really cool from a sizing standpoint. You're right. You don't have to deal with that because that's a return
so I
rate.
have another business. That's part of what we're doing. So right after this, I should say a year after this, or about a season or so, I launched a new company. It's not technically part of Beardhead. It's sort of like a sister company. It's called Zoo Snoods, and that's ZOOSNOODS. It's basically like a beard head for your dog, but it's not a beard. But they're like knit, kind of funny, but they're also functional. They keep them warm. They keep their heads clean, but they're really cute, and it's for your dog. And that was kind of like, we would get a lot of requests from people like, can you make something for the dog? And they would actually put a beard head on the dog. So that's actually been, it's as large as Beardhead is now. Just the last year, they've kind of made as much money as each other. So
is that on the Beardhead website as well, or access to it?
No. I used to have a link, I think, and then I just kind of took that down.
Spell that again for everybody.
ZOOSNOODS.
Got it.
Zoo Snoods.
Zoo Snoods.
Yeah. I didn't make the word snoods up, by the way. It's a real word, but it was not a commonly used word. Now it's getting a little bit more popular because it's been a really popular product. So that's actually been really exciting for me. Beardhead was started because I liked snowboarding, and I love dogs. I love my dog. My dog's usually here in the office with me, but I didn't bring him today because he'd be kind of messing with me during this interview. I didn't want him here. But I love my dog, and this is sort of like an extension of that. I always like to do businesses within my own kind of sphere.
I have 2 yellow labs, and I love them too.
Well, I'll send you. I didn't even send you a Beardhead yet, so I'll send you a Beardhead with some.
Perfect. That'd be great. Yeah. David, thank you for your time. I know the listeners and viewers really appreciate it just by the influx of surveys and questions that we had. So I really appreciate your time today.
No, I appreciate it too. I really appreciate being on here. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I always love talking about business. So thanks for having me.
Great. Stay tuned for more What Would You Ask podcast up next.